2, 1. Action! All right. You guys ready for some action tonight? Maybe not so much when we're talking about the bowel, right? Okay, well, anyway. I want you to imagine living 70, 80, or 90 years of quality health. What's the key word there?
Quality.
Quality, thank you, yes. Imagine that type of life where you're not dependent upon any medication or surgery just to be able to get up and function every day. Who wants that? Yeah, we all do, right? Imagine having a predictable level of health in the next 10, 20, or 30 years where you'll know exactly what you'll be doing, whether that be loaded with energy, being an active mom or dad, still being able to do your favorite pastimes or outdoor pursuits or hobbies. Or maybe it's just being able to ensure that when you go to an event, you're not worried about, is there going to be a toilet nearby? All right? Because these are some of the things that a lot of people are actually having to think about. All right? So who wants to be able to make sure we don't have to worry about any of that? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Dr. Neil Thompson. That's Dr. Patrick Newman in the back there. And essentially, we are wellness doctors. Now, the fact that you guys, when I say guys, ladies and gentlemen, all right, the fact that you are all here tonight means that you are action takers. And success is always reserved for the action taker. Imagine you've got two people. One of them knows everything about exercise, and the other person actually just goes to the gym and exercises. Who do you think is going to get better results? The second one, the person who takes action. So the fact that you all came out and took time out your busy schedules to be here tonight, well done. Give yourself a pat in the back, all right? Because you've taken the first step towards starting to get healthy. And it starts with education and awareness. And hopefully tonight you're going to leave inspired and thinking, you know what, there is hope. There's absolutely lots I can do here. And I know that because I've, in my last 20 years of practice, I've seen thousands of people who have got much, much better. And when it comes to digestive problems, I would say it's probably one of the most common things that we see in this clinic here. And you're going to see why we'll be able to help. Okay, so in the next hour or so, you're going to discover some of the most powerful, effective, natural ways of getting healthy and staying healthy. I'm going to share with you some information that's going to help you understand how you can have more energy, how you can have a better digestive system that is more regular, how you can have less sickness, how you can become pain-free, and how you can dramatically reduce your chance of ever having to have a surgery, or even reduce the risk of your chance of developing a chronic disease like heart disease, cancer, diabetes. These are the big diseases that really are big problems in our society today. All right, so we all want to make sure that we don't have to worry about these things. And I'm hoping that tonight's information is going to give you some clarity as to why we get a lot of these problems in the first place, but more importantly, what you can do to get yourself out of a hole that you might find yourself in, and then to stay healthy, all right? Okay, now I've probably traveled, I've seen well over 100 or attended well over 100 conferences and seminars around the world studying the lifestyle strategies of some of the healthiest people on the planet. But I always find that when I go to one of these conferences or seminars, I always find I get so much more out of the message if I understand a little bit more about the messenger and the background of who's giving the talk. So is it all right if I just give you a brief sort of overview of how I've ended up coming to talk to you tonight about digestive issues? Is that fair enough?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I grew up in Southern Africa. I went and did my master's degree in chiropractic in Durban. For those of you who wonder why we get called doctor, it's because it's a 6-year master's degree. And so that essentially was my undergrad. And I had a great opportunity after graduating in South Africa to run a very busy practice in the Republic of Ireland in Galway on the West Coast. I had an Irish passport, so I was very fortunate to be able to literally leave straight away, and I didn't have to worry about visas and all the rest of it. And I can thank my grandfather for that. That's where the red hair comes from. So in case you're wondering, what is a red-haired African talking to me about digestive system problems? Well, now hopefully that's why you can make the connection. Anyway, so I got to Ireland, and I kind of landed my bum in the butter, to be honest, because it was a busy practice for a new graduate. So I got to see a lot of people very quickly. And within 2 years, it became the fastest growing practice in Southern Ireland at the time. And whilst I was getting good results, to be honest, a lot of them were temporary, and I was getting frustrated with that. I wanted to see long-term change in people. People were getting better for a while, and they kept coming back in with the same problems. And so I had very different ideas to the practice owner's plan for the practice. So I decided, look, I'm going to go on my own. I'm going to set up my own practice. So I set up my own practice, and within 2 years, we were seeing over 200 people a week. And the reason why we were seeing large numbers, but more importantly, why we were getting so much better results, is because we started to adopt a more holistic approach to trying to get people healthy and well. Because your health is more than just about trying to reduce an ache or a pain. It's about trying to get your whole body functioning so much better in terms of how you eat, move, and think, and getting your spine and nervous system functioning optimally. That's really what you're going to need. Those are the 4 foundations of health. How you eat, move, think, and getting your spine and nervous system in a healthy state. And you'll understand why that's so important in a second, because the bottom line is your nervous system controls everything in your body. So when we started to adopt a more holistic approach, and we also then started to adopt a true spinal corrective care approach, we started to get these changes. And I was only able to do that because I was able to then do a lot of postgraduate studying in the States, where I was able to earn my chiropractic biophysics fellowship. Essentially, chiropractic biophysics is the most researched form of chiropractic there is in the world. In fact, there's more research supporting chiropractic biophysics than all other spine and postural correction techniques put together, including all the other chiropractic techniques as well. So we very much are a clinic here that is steeped in science and evidence-based. So we have a saying here, in God we trust, all others bring data. So unless it's backed up with really good quality research, we don't do it. So just to assure any of you here who are thinking, I'm not so sure about this place, how much evidence do they really use to back up what they're doing? That's very much my background. I'm very much a nuts and bolts kind of person, and so I know for a fact as Dr. Newman as well. And so I'm now one of only 5, or this clinic, should I say, is now only one of 5 chiropractic biophysics clinics in the whole of Europe. And I'm one of only 2 advanced chiropractic biophysics practitioners in Europe. And so we've now been able to take spinal correction to a whole new level. We can literally reshape people's spines, and that has a profound effect on your nervous system. And guess what your nervous system controls? Everything, including your digestion. Okay, so you're going to start to see the connections in a few minutes as I explain them out. Because I also then did a lot of postgraduate studies in wellness science, Eat Well, Move Well, Think Well, with Dr. James Chestnut, who's probably arguably the leading wellness expert in the world at the moment. He lectures most of the medical university professors. So we were very fortunate, and I was very fortunate to be a part of his program. I was then able to incorporate this very much wellness approach to the clinic. And so it grew very quickly, and we started to get some really good long-term results for people. So it was exciting. At about that time, I fell in love with my wife, who happens to be the sister of my best friend. And yes, I've heard all the jokes. I've known her since I was 6 years old. Her brother, which was my best mate of mine, we were in the same class together at school. And so I got to know her as a young boy growing up. Whenever I used to go to his house, she was there. She only became interesting really when I was about 12 or 13. But anyway, as they say, the rest is history. But we didn't have any family in Ireland at the time. And so we wanted to move closer to family when we started our own family. And her brother happened to be moving to the Isle of Man from South Africa at that time. And he said, well, why don't you come to the Isle of Man? And my initial thought was, why do I want to go from one muddy, wet island to another muddy, wet island? I was kind of looking forward to going back to sunny South Africa at the time. This was way back in 2008 or 9. And he convinced me, no, it's a great place, come check it out. So we said, well, we'll just come for a holiday. And it turned out to be such a beautiful place. And we thought, this is an amazing place to raise a family. And so we decided, yes, we're going to move. It was a great opportunity also to set up our clinic here. And so Align for Life was born in 2009, November 2009. So we've been here just over 10 years now, and we've seen almost 5,000 people and changed the lives of hundreds of families. And it's because of the principles I'm going to be teaching you tonight. It's not because I've got a magic wand or I'm a wizard or Dr. Newman is. It's simply because of the principles that you're going to learn tonight. All right. So hopefully that's going to give you a little bit of hope and encouragement. And so sit back and, or should I say, get ready. Hopefully we're going to rock you off your seats with some of the information I'm going to share with you tonight. And we're going to, in particular, focus in on really the big four issues: acid reflux, okay, and heartburn, IBS, Crohn's, celiac disease. All right, those are really the big ones that we're going to be focusing in on. Yes, there are lots of other digestive issues, and we will cover some of the principles of why they happen in a few minutes as well. But those are the big ones that we're going to be focusing in on. So, and when I talk about IBS, that will include constipation and diarrhea, or a mixture of both. All right. So it's probably one of the most common chronic illness problems, or should I say chronic symptom problems, in the Western world at the moment. Every Tom, Dick, and Sally virtually now is struggling with some form of IBS. I think you're going to find out why in a few minutes. All right, so when we get these symptoms, whether it be heartburn, acid reflux, IBS, whatever it is, they're what we call body signals. So this talk that you've come to tonight essentially is what we call a body signals talk. So every month we do a different talk on different common health topics that people struggle with. And when we develop these kind of symptoms, essentially they are body signals. They are things that your body is trying to, these symptoms your body is producing because it's trying to tell you something's wrong. You've got to think of your symptoms that you're experiencing like a fire alarm. So if a fire alarm goes off, does it make sense to disconnect the battery? Or does it make sense to go find out where the fire is and put out the fire? Put out the fire, right? Now when we take the medication to suppress whatever bowel problem we've got, that's exactly the same as disconnecting the battery. We don't like that symptom. That's a horrible noise, or that's a horrible symptom, or whatever it is. Take the medication, it suppresses the symptom, but what do you think now is happening to the fire in the background? It's going out of control. It's getting bigger, right? And if you continue to ignore the problem in the back that's causing the fire alarm to go off in the first place, what's eventually going to happen to the building? Burn down, okay? And obviously, in this analogy, your body is the building. So when we get signals or symptoms, we need to take note of them because our body is trying to tell us something. And the question is are you listening? Or are you just trying to ignore it? Or even worse, are you just trying to suppress it with medication? For those of you who take the approach of ignoring, and I get that, I was one of them, believe me, I've been there, done that. When we ignore problems, do they tend to get worse or worse? Almost always worse, right? As people get older, do they normally get better or worse? Worse, okay? So unfortunately, they tend to get worse. And when we do things to try and then suppress the symptom, we are essentially ignoring the root problem, and we're creating other complications because of all the side effects now of the drugs or medication that we're taking. So much so that I don't know if you're aware of the fact that side effects of drugs and surgery is now the third leading cause of death in the UK. I don't know if you're aware of that. Okay, so can we agree that while sometimes it's necessary, I'm not saying drugs and surgery is never necessary, sometimes it is necessary, but can we agree that it's risky and it should be a last resort? Is that fair enough? Okay, all right, so it really should be a last resort. We need to first start to try and add health first before we have to resort to things like that. Okay, so all of us are on this illness-wellness continuum. You're not static. You'd be amazed at how often on our intake forms you say, which direction are you going? And then they just leave it blank. We're all either heading that direction or that direction. We're never static because health is not static. You're either getting healthier or you're getting sicker. And you need to kind of be honest with yourself. Where are you? Which direction are you going? Because if we're heading in this direction, it's first going to start with a sign. Okay, neutral point, by the way, you don't experience any obvious symptoms. So it might not mean that you're healthy, it just means you don't have any symptoms yet. There's a key difference there, okay? That is true healthy, all right? This just means we have no symptoms, but the moment things deteriorate even slightly, you're going to start to develop a sign. What would be an example of a sign? Well, maybe your blood pressure starts to elevate, okay, because you're stressed. Can you feel your blood pressure elevating? No, you can only have it measured by a doctor. So that's what we call a sign, all right? So it's a sign that you're heading in the wrong direction. And eventually that's going to lead to symptoms, where now your body thinks, okay, you need to know about this now, all right? And it's now going to give you a symptom. So you're now going to start to develop heartburn because you're so stressed, or acid reflux, or whatever it is, okay? Or you're going to start to develop IBS, or constipation, or diarrhea. And it's not just because you had, a slightly spicy meal. It's something that is often ongoing, and you're wondering what's going on. Your body's trying to tell you something. It's not heading in the right direction. And if it continues, eventually it's going to lead to disability, where now your symptoms are so bad that actually now you can't function properly. And obviously, if that's ignored, we end up leading to early death. So getting healthy and well starts with awareness and education. So well done for being here tonight, because this is really the biggest hurdle, because so many people are in this sort of, they're like ostriches sticking their heads in the sand. They don't want to admit that there's a problem, and they're hoping that just by ignoring it, it's just going to go away. But if you can start to become aware of what might be causing you a problem, now you can start to take action to really start to get some traction and headway. So when we talk about sickness and disease and health in general, a lot of people, if I ask them, if I look good and feel good, am I healthy? And a lot of people would probably, if I did a quick survey in Tesco right now, if you asked them to fill out the questionnaire, and if you said, if you look healthy and you feel good, most of them would probably say, yes, I'm healthy. But how many people do we know of who seem healthy one day, but literally the next day they drop dead of a heart attack? It happens quite often, doesn't it? All right. We know heart disease doesn't just take 12 hours to develop. It takes more like 20 years to develop, because we can't feel our arteries clogging up with atherosclerosis. Well, how about cancer? You may have heard of someone who's just gone in for a routine scan. They felt perfectly fine. They looked perfectly fine. They just went in for a routine scan, and they were diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. It happens more often than we realize, doesn't it? And often within a year or two, that person is now passed away. So judging our health on how we look or feel, good idea or bad idea? Good, bad? Bad, right? But most of us are. In fact, if you go to your doctor today and say, listen, I feel perfectly fine, but just please can you check me out? He's going to probably be quite surprised, because we're kind of not quite there yet with wellness and prevention. Because it's about how well are we functioning, not how well are we feeling. Because we could be functioning at this level here, but we're not actually healthy. Because where's healthy? Healthy's there. This is literally one step away from a problem. Okay? And sadly, if you have heart disease, that first symptom might be a heart attack. And you don't get a second chance. You literally jump from here, boom, to there. Okay? So we've got to start basing our health on how we function, not feel. And when we look at the nervous system, it's going to help you understand why. Because when we think nerves, the first thing I ask when a person says, what's the first thing that comes to mind when I say the word nerve? Most people say pain. We do, right? Let's be honest. If I say nerve, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? You'll probably say pain. Sorry? You're getting on my nerves. Well, you're getting on my nerves. But the reality is pain, which is part of the sensory part of the nervous system, accounts for less than 10%. So you theoretically could be 90% damaged in your body, but you're going to feel no pain or symptom. Okay, so The rest of the nervous system is made up of your motor nerves, where you're going to get things like weakness, spasms, fatigue, and tightness when this is starting to be affected. So how many of you are sitting there with maybe slightly tense back or neck or shoulders? Okay, that's an indication that your motor nervous system is actually under stress. Or the autonomic nervous system, which is the part you can't have any control over. And it's basically the part of the nervous system that controls all your organs. Okay, so digestion, breathing, etc. And we don't normally know we've got a problem with this until such time as, oh, I wonder why my digestion is not functioning as well as it used to. And you think, well, it can't be anything to do with my spine because I don't have any back pain. And unfortunately, that's such a common error, because you can have loads of problems with your autonomic nervous system and no back pain, yet the problem could be coming from your spine. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. So there's this dangerous belief that drugs work. They don't correct the problem, they simply mask the symptom of the problem. You've probably all seen adverts like this, okay? Colossal corn dogs. I mean, this is your classic American type ad, isn't it? But we have similar things. So here they're talking about Prilosec, but Nexium is a common one that you get here in the UK. All right? How many of you have heard of Nexium? Okay, it's a proton pump inhibitor. Okay, so it prevents a lot of severe heartburn and stomach pain. All right, but basically all it's doing is it's trying to suppress symptoms. And you might even think that this is somewhat insulting to your intelligence, because there they are talking about all you need is to take Prilosec, but keep eating your junk corn dogs. And we're kind of not making the connection, but maybe the quality of the food that we're eating is maybe not so good for our bodies. But it's okay as long as we can just eat the junk food more comfortably. So it's really quite sad what's happening. And just some of the side effects to things like Nexium or Prilosec or Losec, it's all of these. And these are just the common things that can easily happen. So there's a risk involved when we start to resort to medication. There is no magic pill. Your problem will just go away if you ignore them. Well, we've talked about that. And often they just get worse. So don't bury your head in the sand. So when we're talking about the nervous system, ultimately it's affected hugely by stress in three forms: thoughts, toxins, traumas, or what we call the 3 T's: thoughts, toxins, and traumas. And would you agree that our world today is more stressful? Let me try again, it's the end of the day. Would you agree that our world today is more stressful than ever before? How many of you would agree with that? Yeah. Okay, it is. Because the pace of life is so fast, and that's the main thing. We're in a rat race now. So yes, you could argue maybe we're not in a wartime era, but they had very different types of stresses. The problem with the stress we have today is it's ongoing, day in, day out. Literally every 8 or 10 hours of your working day is stressful. And your body wasn't designed to be in that fight or flight or stress response for that kind of period of time. You're only supposed to be in a fight-flight state for maybe 5 minutes, for as long as it takes you to run away from a bear. Because historically, what were we? We were hunter-gatherers in the forest, and we suddenly came across a bear, and it either killed us, or ate us, or we managed to get away. But the outcome would be decided in about probably a minute. Okay? And once we're away from the bear, our nervous systems could relax again, we can go back to normal. The problem we have now is we're in that fight-flight state day in, day out, week after week. And our bodies just weren't designed for that. Whether it be traffic, you know, that email that you've got to that you've got to reply to within literally 20 minutes nowadays, otherwise people get antsy. And you know, days gone by, it'd be a week before the returned letter would get back to you. So you know, everything is just so much more stressful. Okay, so we're going to just look at why having a healthy nervous system is so important. So what we've first got to understand is that your body is designed to be healthy. Healthy is normal, believe it or not. Just because there's so many sick people out there, it doesn't mean to say it's normal to get sick. You know, my daughter's 9 years old now. She's never been to the GP ever. Not because we just let her suffer, and she hasn't needed to. In fact, the most she's had is some athlete's foot. So we had put some cream on her athlete's foot, which she probably picked up from the NSC when she was at swimming. So, healthy though is normal here's the big if you give the body what it needs and you remove what it doesn't need. The problem we have in the world today is that our bodies are being exposed to an environment that is completely unnatural or not what it really needs. So healthy is normal. Your body is smart. Okay? Is it intelligent for you to get pain when your body is not functioning well? Yes, because it's trying to tell you something's wrong so you can do something about it. Your nervous system is the master system. It controls everything in your body. Your heart, your lungs, your digestion, absolutely everything. And your spine is the suit of armor that protects the nervous system. So if your spine is all out of alignment and your posture is all out of whack, how well is your nervous system going to work? Not that good. Okay, so this is going to be one of the reasons why we need to pay special attention to looking after our spine alignment and our posture. And modern life is unnaturally stressful. So when we get into that fight-flight state, that stress state, all this stuff happens. Blood pressure goes up, heart rate goes up, muscle tone. All this stuff is going to help you get away from the bear. Okay? Even cholesterol is going to go up. Why? Because your body knows that there's a good chance that bear could get hold of you, and if it rips your arm off, you're going to bleed to death. So do you think it's intelligent to increase your clotting factors so you can clot the wound really quickly so you don't bleed to death? Yes. So that's why the LDL cholesterol starts to elevate. And we all think LDL cholesterol is bad. It's not bad, it's just what is appropriate or not. And in this situation, it's going to save your life. But the problem is if our bodies are constantly stressed, even if we're not coming across a bear, that's why our cholesterol profiles change. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, to help with wound repair, etc. It also is essential in the manufacture of stress hormone, cortisol and adrenaline. Without LDL cholesterol, you cannot make cortisol and adrenaline. So that's obviously also why your body's going to increase your LDL cholesterol. Okay, clotting factors go up, fear and anxiety go up, all these things start to change, okay? And your digestion starts to slow or stop. Why? Because when you're about to be mauled by a bear, do you think your body really cares about digestion? Is it a top priority? No, it couldn't give a continental about digestion, okay? So it's going to down-regulate your digestive system capabilities because digestion chews up a lot of energy. And you don't want to be directing precious energy towards digesting your meal when you're trying to fight a bear. Okay? Make sense? All right. Problem is we're fighting bears all the time. And our body doesn't know the difference between an actual threat versus a perceived threat. It will respond physiologically the same way. So your autonomic nervous system, which is the thing that really is impacted most when we're in that fight-or-flight state, can only function properly when we're not in fight or flight. So there's two parts to the autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. The sympathetic obviously is when you're in that fight-flight. The parasympathetic is the rest of the time, when you're in rest, digest, and doing healing and repairing. We should be 80% of the time in this state and maybe only 20% of the time at most in this state. But for most of us, it's the other way around. And this is why we're getting so much digestive system problems. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's just have a look at this chart here. It's what we call the powers in the panel. Your nervous system is electricity. Okay, it's electricity. It's really the best way to think of it, because it actually is. Your brain is constantly sending messages down through the spinal cord, out through all these nerves, to every cell, tissue, and organ in the body. The body, in turn, is then sending messages back via those nerves, back up the spinal cord, back up to the brain to tell the brain what's going on. So there's this constant communication between brain, body, and brain. And if that's flowing really well, we get to be healthy, things function well, and we heal and repair well. However, if we start to develop interferences or blockages in that nervous system flow at any point in the spine, things can start to go wrong. So for example, if I cut the nerve to the heart here, how well would that heart work? Not very well, right? Is that fact or theory? Fact, okay? If I create enough pressure in this part of the spine here to now irritate the nerve that goes to that heart there, does it make sense that maybe the heart's now not going to work as well as it should do? Okay? Exactly. Same it could apply to this area here, where now we're talking about the nerves to your stomach and your digestive system. So if you've got problems in the spine, in this part of the spine here, it's going to start to potentially cause problems to your digestive system. But also, you've got a very big, thick nerve that comes from the top of the spinal cord called your vagus nerve that pretty much controls all of this big green one here. See how much of this green nerve eventually goes to supply. All right? So if you've got a problem right up at the top of the neck here, it's also going to start to potentially affect your nervous system and all sorts of other things as well. So for example, you might not just have digestive system problems, you might also have problems breathing, shortness of breath, or you might get ringing in the ears, okay, because it starts to affect even your auditory system, or visual problems, or you could get headaches. Maybe if you've got problems in the spine here, interferences or blockages in the nervous system here could start to affect your thyroid function, affecting your metabolism, weight gain or weight loss. Problems in the spine here can often lead to heart problems like palpitations, blood pressure problems, or even heart issues, or asthma, difficulty breathing, shortness of breath. Problems here could often affect things like the stomach directly. That's when you could get things like acid reflux or heartburn, okay? Or gas, bloating, very common, especially if it starts to affect this part of the spine here where the nerve's going to supply your colon. All right, so when we get these problems in the spine, where literally the spine now is not moving properly and is poorly aligned, and it can start to put pressure on these nerves, it's what we now call a subluxation. Think of it as an interference in the nervous system. It's really the best way. So you get joint misalignment there, soft tissue damage develops, inflammation and nerve irritation starts to develop. And remember, that nerve is sending signals from the brain to whatever organ or tissue that nerve is supplying, and that nerve is conducting feedback information from that organ or tissue back up to the brain. So if the brain is not receiving accurate information from the organ or tissue, how on earth is it going to be able to send out appropriate output to that organ to keep it functioning normally? It's a two-way cycle, right? It's feedback, right? So those nerves are the way your brain can talk to your body and your body can talk back up to your brain. And if it's being pressurized or irritated, it can't do that. Does that make sense? Okay. Muscle spasm can develop. Okay, loss of inflation of the discs can develop, so what they call lost imbibition. Joint fixation, so joints become very stiff and rigid, so that's always a bad sign. If you can't turn your neck properly, or you don't have really good flexibility of your spine, immediately that's an indication probably you've got subluxation problems in your spine. Even if you've got no pain, okay, and this is key to understand. You might have absolutely no pain in the spine, but all of this could be going on, all right? And that's why I've spoken to people in the past before, and they've said to me, "Doc, but it can't be a problem in my spine. I don't have any back pain." And I said, "Well, when was the last time you had a decent night's sleep?" "Well, that was years." "Well, because that also potentially could affect how well you sleep." "Or when was the last time you had a normal bowel movement?" "Well, that's also probably years." Because when this happens, you get elevated stress hormones, which is A, why you're not sleeping well, and B, why your digestion is not firing properly. Because when your body is stressed, is it interested in digestion? Yes or no? No. Okay? So this is a problem. So these subluxations in the spine create stress to your brain. And when your brain's stressed, it's like it's fighting lions again. And it doesn't care about digestion. Okay, so that's how problems in your spine can have a direct influence on your brain. But also, we now understand that when the spine doesn't move properly, this part of the brain, called the prefrontal cortex, literally starts to shut down. You've got to think of your prefrontal cortex like a battery and the spine like a generator. The better the spine moves, the better the prefrontal cortex works. The worse the spine moves, the prefrontal cortex, the battery goes flat. And this part of the brain controls 5 very important functions. Number 1, it controls the autonomic nervous system, which we've talked about. So the big problem number 1. Number 2, it also controls inflammation. So a person's going to experience more inflammatory problems in their body, one of which then could lead to chronic pain, but also could lead to increased things like heart disease, because that's inflammation in your arteries. Okay? In fact, we now understand that chronic inflammation is probably the root cause of virtually every chronic disease out there, even cancer. Also, this part of the brain controls immune system function. How many of you would agree you want a nice, strong immune system at the moment? Yes? Absolutely, right? So the better your spine moves, the better this part of your brain can work, which means your immune system is then going to be in a better, healthier state. It also controls endocrine function, hormonal levels. So this is often why women will struggle with a lot of menopausal problems if their spines are full of subluxation problems, or why they might be struggling to fall pregnant. Can you see how it can affect so many different things? And then the last thing it affects in particular is higher cognitive function, focus, concentration, memory, and learning. So this is often going to lead to people with not just things like short-term memory problems, but also further down the road, this can increase a person's risk of things like dementia and Alzheimer's. Okay, and how many of you would agree that's a big problem now in our elderly? It is, it's a huge problem. And it's not because they're getting old. It's because their spines are stopping moving. They're so subluxated to the hilt, the brain is going flat. So telling them to do, or trying to encourage them to do crossword puzzles, do you think that's going to help them significantly? No. But getting them doing anything to move their spine, do you think that's going to help them? Absolutely. Okay, but that's not happening. Okay, and even when we're looking at coronavirus at the moment, who are the biggest at-risk groups? The elderly, who are sedentary and are hardly moving, and or younger people who are very sedentary and who have very unhealthy lifestyles. Okay, so and yet it's unheard of virtually, or it's very rare in children. Because what are children doing all the time? Young ones, because the older ones now are just sitting in front of computers. But they're moving around, right? They're running around all over the place. That's why they're at such a low risk. Okay, because their immune systems can function properly because their prefrontal cortex is working better, amongst other things as well. They haven't had the bioaccumulation of decades worth of toxic deficient lifestyles like we have. Okay, all right, so moving on. So what causes these subluxations? What causes these parts of the spine to become misaligned and create these interferences in the nervous system? Well, it's life, right? Okay, bad postural habits. This is pretty much our working life now. Okay, look at the neck posture here. Does that look like a hunter-gatherer posture? No, because we're designed to be upright. We're not designed to be like this. Okay, and that puts huge stresses on the spine, in the neck and the thorax. And obviously sitting all day long is also causing huge stresses on the lumbar spine. So it's just the micro trauma, little stuff adds up. So it's not just if we've had a car accident, all right? And obviously those things cause it as well. Any slip or fall or trauma can jar the spine out of its normal alignment, which again can start to cause these subluxation problems. Often though, it's just a micro trauma. Okay, so when we're talking about specific things now, in this case we're going to talk briefly about chronic constipation. Think of your engine is only as good as the exhaust system. All right, you'll have to excuse my sort of rather crass humor there. But the reality is if your body cannot remove the rubbish, you are not going to perform well. Okay? And for many people, this might just be now and then, but it often becomes to the point where it's now the new normal. And there's nothing normal about it at all, even if it's a now and then. because it can always be traced to either a toxicity, a deficiency in our lifestyle, or stress. Always, without fail, okay? And if it's become chronic and ongoing, that can obviously lead to much more serious complications like bowel cancer, okay? Because basically you've got impacted fecal matter sitting in the colon for decades because it's not being able to be removed. And that now, unfortunately, is very damaging. It creates inflammation in the walls of the colon, and that's when you now start to get things like cancer developing. Make sense? Okay. So be aware if you get things like that and it's chronic ongoing, that's the kind of risk that you now start running. Often chronic constipation could be as a result of subluxation problems in the upper cervical area, C1 to C3, because it's affecting that vagus nerve. That vagus nerve, if it's not firing properly, means it cannot get your gut moving properly. All right? So if your spine is not moving and aligned properly there, your vagus nerve can't work like it needs to. So that could be causing it. L1 to L2, so your lumbar area here, affecting all these nerves that directly go and supply, obviously, the bowel and the small bowel and large bowel. And then L5 to S3 as well can have an effect. When we're talking about irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, and celiac disease, we need to start to understand the concept of leaky gut. Who here knows about what leaky gut is, or who's heard of leaky gut before? Okay, so this is a very important concept that is becoming more and more sort of thrown around amongst healthcare professionals, and for good reason. Because when you look at the gut wall, it kind of looks like that under a microscope. Okay, it's not just a smooth surface, it's all these little humps and bumps, okay, to increase the surface area maximally to get maximum absorption. So it's all you want tight junctions and permeability for a healthy gut wall. And unfortunately, grains wreak havoc with that. They split open the gut wall because of things like lectins. Okay? Essentially, these are toxins or irritant properties. Gluten's a big one. Okay, which actually causes permeability of food to enter directly into the bloodstream because it creates so much inflammation in this gut wall. And I'm going to show you a little diagram here now. So let's see it here. Okay. Oh. Okay, so here's your gut. So this is your bloodstream, and these are the cells of the gut. All right? They should have normal tight junctions. This is a healthy gut. All right? So food has to go through the little villi, okay, and be absorbed into the bloodstream and digested properly to do that. But if you've got gaps, food particles can now enter directly into the bloodstream, and that's now when you start to develop an autoimmune response, because you're not supposed to have undigested food going directly into your bloodstream, which is why you don't want to be injected with broccoli serum, okay, when you're sick, because that's not what your blood needs, okay? But even something as inert as broccoli now, which is the most healthy food on the planet virtually, if it goes straight into the bloodstream, is not good. And you can now start to develop an allergy to something as healthy as broccoli. Does that make sense? Does it now make sense why some people are allergic to some ridiculously seemingly healthy things? Okay? But it's because we might be eating other foods like grains, which irritate the gut wall and create these gaps. Or you end up getting so much inflammation in the cells here that they actually pass directly through without being digested properly. That's what they call leaky gut. And unfortunately, gluten is one of the worst of them. So any grains that are high in gluten are very bad for your bowel. Wheat, bread, pasta, biscuits, cakes, all the stuff we tend to almost eat the most of is actually one of the worst things for your gut. Because remember, ladies and gentlemen, we're hunter-gatherers. How many hunter-gatherers do you know of eat bread or pasta? Biscuits? Cake? They don't. So for thousands of years, we've been eating seeds, nuts, vegetables, fruit, and meat. That's it. And now suddenly, within the last 1,000, we're now introducing, probably really only 500 since the agricultural revolution, we're now introducing all these grains. Our bodies weren't designed for this. And so leaky gut's becoming a bigger and bigger problem. And unfortunately, what's even worse now is most of the wheat that is grown has much, much higher levels of gluten than, say, in the biblical days 2,000 years ago. Because the wheat that is now grown is what they call a short grain wheat, which is very drought resistant and pesticide resistant. So it produces a high yield for farmers, big money. But it also produces a lot of gluten, bad for you. But remember, it's not about what's good for you now, isn't it? It's what's just gets sold, okay? And what's cost effective to mass produce. So we live in a world now where it's no longer about quality food, it's about quantity. And we're paying the price, which is now why there's so many gluten intolerant and sensitive people now, because the amount of gluten we're being exposed to now is way more than it used to be. Does that make sense? Okay, so first thing you need to do, get off the bread and the pasta and the biscuits and the cake, all right? Except it's a treat when you have it, all right? I promise you guys, if you do this, please take my challenge for 3 weeks. No wheat, no dairy. And you'll be amazed at the difference you're going to start to feel with not just your gut, but your overall health.
So
I challenge you.
About the dairy, you talked about the grain.
I'll get to that in a sec, don't worry. Okay, so, well, since you ask, I can't resist a good question because it's a great question. The problem with dairy is that for years we've been told dairy is good for you, right? You know, it's important for your calcium, for your bones and your teeth. The problem is that if you are getting raw dairy from your cow in the backyard, I'd say you're good to go. But we now pasteurize our milk. And when you superheat milk, that's what pasteurization is. They superheat it. Remember, milk is mainly protein. So when you superheat protein, what happens to proteins? Sorry? It denatures, right? Okay, please ignore that. I think it's the battery. I asked Steph to get Jeff to have a look at it. No, it's down there underneath the, yeah. We can't fix it though because it's an indication that there was a power cut over the weekend.
Right, okay.
He needs to do something to that then. All right.
So there's nothing I can do.
There's nothing you can do now. Sorry guys, you're just gonna have to ignore that really irritating noise. You gotta love it, eh? So when you superheat protein, it denatures. So the proteins now in milk, your body doesn't even recognize because they've been denatured. And so when your body now gets exposed to these foreign proteins, it mounts an immunological response to them. So that's why you find people who are drinking lots of dairy or eating lots of dairy are constantly got runny noses, sinus issues, okay, or bowel problems because your body is developing an antibody response to it. It's an inflammatory response. So if you get off dairy, suddenly now your immune system is now not going to be primed all the time and you're not going to have all these immunological responses to these foreign proteins. Unless you can get hold of raw milk, which is great. If you can get hold of raw milk, brilliant. Okay. Thank you, Lord. Rather, a better source of milk is almond, oat milk, coconut milk. All right. Remember, I mean, even when we were hunter-gatherers, you didn't run around sucking on a wildebeest teat, did you? In fact, you drank the blood. That you did do, but you didn't drink the milk. And even when you did eventually drink the milk later on during, later on in the sort of man's progress, they were all drinking unpasteurized milk. And the cows only ate grass. A lot of the cows, not so much here, but certainly in the rest of the world, they're corn-fed. And so corn-fed, I mean, cows eat grass. A lot of them also are given hormones so that they keep lactating. So you're going to get exposed to high levels of sex hormone, which is going to increase your risk of cancer. Because free-floating sex hormone, not where you need it, but everywhere else, is actually bad. Because sex hormone, the job of sex hormone causes rapid division of cells. And what does rapid division of cells, uncontrollable, sound like to you? Cancer. Okay? So people who are having dairy on a regular basis will also be increasing their risk of cancer. Okay? So the problem is we've been literally brainwashed and marketed to death. And it all started from the grain and dairy lobbyists in the 1950s in the US, because they were trying to increase the sales of their product, which is really quite sad, because our modern health has now suffered tremendously because of it. So some of you are going to think, well, where am I going to get my calcium from? Dark green vegetables has always been the best source of calcium. In fact, there's now so much research showing that the calcium in milk is in a form that your body can't even really absorb. So it just goes in one end and out the other. So that's another big lie. When they say calcium is good for your bones and teeth, they're correct. But they cannot say milk is good for your bones and teeth. And next time you see an advert, listen carefully to the wording. We have a lawyer in the back here. Wording is everything, okay? They're not allowed to say milk is good for your bones and teeth. They are allowed to say milk has lots of calcium in it, and calcium is good for your bones and your teeth. But that's subversive. You're completely, trying to manipulate really what the message is. And it's so wrong. But this is why so many people are suffering unneedlessly. Like my daughter who's 9 years old, she never has milk, ever. Like she's never had a glass of milk in her entire life. And she's 9 years old. But she was breastfed for 18 months. And she now loves coconut milk. And she doesn't have any bone problems. Okay, because most of your calcium, the best source of calcium is dark green vegetables. She probably eats more salad in one sitting than most adults eat in a week. Because we don't eat potatoes and bread and starch. If they want to fill up, they're filling up on fruits and vegetables. Okay, so crudités are kind of the standard meal that we often almost having every dinner. Is fresh vegetables with some hummus dip or some mashed up avocado. All right. So it really makes a huge, huge difference. But thank you, that's a great question because I often forget to answer that one. Goat's milk is better, but they still have to pasteurize it. If you can get it unpasteurized, even better. But it does tend to cope better with pasteurization than cow's milk. So it's better, but it's still not ideal. So if you like cheese, like I love cheese. Like, I mean, come on. Like I wish I couldn't. And so if I have cheese, I do much better with goat's cheese. Okay? But if you can get hold of unpasteurized cheese, which occasionally you can get some of the French bries and things that unpasteurized, great. Go for it. Then it's much, much better for you. Okay. Great question. Thank you for that. But also rye and barley also have high levels of gluten in it as well. Also, just know grains, though, have a high glycemic index, meaning it causes your blood sugar levels to spike. Right? All grain is really is when you break it down, is it's glucose. Okay, it's starch which gets converted into glucose, and so all it is just sugar. There's very little nutritional value in grains. So you remember the whole food pyramid? We're told we should be eating mainly what at the bottom? Grains. Because the food pyramid was devised by the grain and dairy lobbyists. They're the ones who devised it. There's no science to back it up, by the way, not a shred, nothing. Yet we've been all living like this since the 1950s. And how's the world's health gone since then? Better or worse? Worse, all right? Heart disease, cancer, almost off the Richter scale now compared to pre-1950s, okay? The whole low-fat, high-carb diet, how did that go? That was an absolute catastrophe, all right? Because you need fat. Fat's actually good, all right? But the reason why they didn't want to target sugar is because companies like Pepsi and Coke had so much power that they couldn't have sugar being named as the bad guy until now, where there's just so much research they can't just keep a lid on it anymore. But back in the 1950s, they instead chose to blame fat, not sugar. But sugar is actually really the problem. Think of sugar like this. When you have a meal that is very high in sugar, that causes a spike in sugar. So any high carbohydrate meal from a grain, even just a sandwich, okay, it will cause a spike. All right. What it does is that sugar is almost like sandpaper to your arteries. That's what sugar does to your arteries. It's like sandpaper to your arteries. And poor old cholesterol comes along and is having to patch up the damage that the sugar has done. And poor old cholesterol now gets blamed for sugar. So cholesterol really is just the innocent bystander at the scene of a car crash. And he gets blamed. Why? Because there's drugs that can lower cholesterol. It's sick. Why do you think so many people are on statins? The top leading cardiologists in the world now are saying, get every single person off statins. They are incredibly damaging to your body. This is not just chiropractors telling this. The world's leading cardiologists are now saying, statins are bad, get them off. But the reason why not every single GP is doing that is because the drug companies have so much control still on healthcare that they're still trying to say that this is what should still be being done, even though there's no research to back it up. When you read the research journal articles, all the research is saying sugar is the problem, not cholesterol, not the fat. Okay? Some fat is bad, yes, like the saturated fat. But I'm talking about the fat from things like avocado oil, coconut oil, olive oil. Those are good fats. You need that kind of fat. Even fat from a grass-fed animal is good fat. But if you're eating the fat from a corn-fed animal, that's bad fat. So don't eat corn-fed animals. Okay, because animals don't typically eat corn naturally. Even a chicken doesn't just eat corn if it's wild. It forages for all sorts of things. Okay, but it's how we've raised our animals now. If they're eating rubbish, you're going to be getting all the bad stuff from that. Okay, so we talked about it's all the sugar, omega-6 fatty acids. This is another thing. The problem with grains is also they have very high levels of omega-6 fatty acids, which are inflammatory. Omega-3 fatty acids, which are the good guys, those are anti-inflammatory. So fish oil, for example, is anti-inflammatory, which is why every single person should be on some form of fish oil to counteract the high levels of omega-6 fatty acids, which are very inflammatory. So we should have a 1-to-1 ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. And most people in the Western world have about a 20-to-1 ratio, 20 omega-6 to 1 omega-3. So that's why everyone should be on a fish oil supplement and everyone should be cutting down their grains. Now you're on a 1-to-1. Remember, hunter-gatherers ate lots of fish. But we can't eat fish every single day because the oceans are so polluted with mercury, which is why now you can't eat more than 3 servings of fish a week. But you actually need to eat fish every day to get the omega-3s. So instead, you now need to supplement with an omega-3 fatty acid. Right? And that's why we highly recommend everyone should be on an omega-3 fatty acid. 1 teaspoon of omega-3 oil per day will help reduce your inflammation, and think of it like brain food as well. If you eat having capsules, you should be having 5 capsules per day. You'll find that 99% of the fish oils that you try buying Boots and Holland and Barrett and Tesco, they'll only say take 2. Why? Because they haven't had the mercury removed. Because it's expensive to remove the mercury. And they're going to price themselves out of the market. So can you see it's all about selling the stuff instead of actually focusing on what people need. So health must always be the goal. So we now stock omega-3 fish oil that's had the mercury removed. And because we buy it in bulk, we're able to get it to you guys at a discounted rate. So you'll probably be hard-pressed to find anything cheaper that's as good. In fact, this is the best available omega-3 on the market based upon world independent studies. But you don't have to get it from here. But wherever you buy it, please just make sure it says mercury-free. It must say mercury-free. If it doesn't say mercury-free, it's not mercury-free, because they will definitely advertise it as mercury-free because it costs a lot to remove it. Okay. All right, so that's a huge tip for you. That's all of you could at least just do that tomorrow, and it's going to start to make a difference. Okay, low nutrient density, meaning there's hardly any nutrients in grains. We talked about that. It's the sugar. And they're acidic. What thrives in alkaline conditions? Sorry, what thrives in acidic conditions? What problem, what disease thrives in acidic conditions? Virtually every chronic disease, especially cancer, but especially cancer. All right? So it's now increasing your risk of cancer. All right, which is why hunter-gathering communities, they hardly have any cancer. In fact, it's virtually unheard of. They don't even know what you're talking about when you try to explain to them cancer or the concept of cancer. Because they have a mainly alkaline diet, because they're mainly eating fruits and vegetables as their source of carbohydrate. Okay, all right. So these are some do's. Non-starchy vegetables. Okay, so potatoes, try and limit your potatoes. It's just sugar, and there's very little nutritional value in potatoes. Sweet potatoes are better, by the way. Much better. All right? Lots of non-starchy vegetables. Some fruit, meat, poultry, and fish. Free-range fed eggs. Eggs are good, by the way. Don't ever let anyone tell you that eggs are bad. Okay? Don't worry about the cholesterol in the eggs. It's negligible. Okay? All right? Natural fats, some nuts and seeds, and lots of water. Make sure it's it's gone blank. Make sure it's spring water, not just tap water. Okay? yeah, please don't drink salt water. Make sure it is spring water, not tap water. Tap water is full of, even though the Isle of Man is better than most, it's still full of chlorine. Very neurotoxic. Bad for your nervous system. Okay?
Filter it, is that okay?
With a Brita filter, it's only going to get rid of some of the impurities. You can't get rid of the heavy metals. So you really need to be drinking spring water or a proper filter that's built in under the sink, which is a much more, it's a much finer filter than just like a Brita filter that you just sit on your countertop. So if you've got one of those filters like this one here, that you can fit in underneath your sink, okay, there's loads of them. Just go online and you'll see loads of them. That would be better. And then you change it every 6 months. Okay. Pre and probiotics. This is huge. Because modern commercial farming methods now, we use chemicals and pesticides to ensure we get a good high yield in crops. The problem is that those chemicals and pesticides kill all the good bacteria. And without those good bacteria, and we get most of them from the food that we're eating, your gut cannot function properly. In fact, most of your food is actually digested by the good bacteria, not by your body. So if you don't have enough good bacteria and you've got too many bad bacteria, which is what happens, because if you don't have enough good guys, the bad guys take over. That's just what happens. It's a numbers game. So the more good guys you have, the less bad guys you have. And the less good guys you have, the more bad guys start to take over. And so now that's why we need to start to supplement with probiotics, okay, which are healthy, good bacteria. You need ideally a probiotic that has got 5 different strains of bacteria and preferably dairy-free, and it should be 15 billion per capsule. So Yakult, not good enough, and it's dairy-based, okay? And you want one with many different strains, okay? And this is going to do wonders for your gut. It's going to get your digestion functioning more efficiently, and it's going to protect you against those harmful bacteria. And there's now so much evidence to link good gut health with brain health. So it's even going to reduce your chance of mental problems, even things like depression. Did you know there's now studies showing that people who've been on courses of antibiotics a year later are much more likely to develop depression? Scary, okay? And that's the first thing a doctor throws at people when they have any form of infection is antibiotic. But the antibiotic kills all your good bacteria. So it's wreaking havoc with your natural defense system, and your good bacteria forms the primary system of your immune system. Can you now see why the world's immune system is so destroyed? No wonder COVID is having a heyday. But people who've got strong immune systems and doing all the stuff I'm telling you about, you don't have to worry about COVID at all. Okay. You just need to make sure you're protecting those people who are vulnerable. But get those vulnerable people onto this stuff, and it makes a difference. I promise it makes a difference.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
It says some fruit there.
Some fruit. So you don't want too much fruit. So you don't want too many grapes. It's high in sugar. Okay. So ideally, you really want 5 veg and 5 fruit a day, but pick the fruit that are not very, very sugary. Otherwise, maybe you only have 3 of those ones. Okay. All right. But some people, if I say 5 fruit a day, cool, I can have 5 servings of grapes a day. And that's a bit too much sugar. Okay. Whereas vegetables are alkaline as well. Okay, and less sugar. All right. Yeah, we need to move on. We talked about that already. That's fine. Okay. So obviously, these are absolute no-nos. These are absolute no-nos. Irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, celiac disease. So these often will develop as a result of leaky gut. Okay. So what can happen is, yes, we need to start to change the diet, but then also get rid of subluxations again, get that vagal tone sorted out, and again, T7 to T11 to help especially the midgut here, all right, and i.e. the small intestine. Often subluxations in this area can really cause problems to the functionality of these organs. And it's purely because you've got subluxations there, probably because you've been sitting at a desk all day long like this. And now this part of your spine develops subluxations, the nerves now can't fire properly. So even if you've got a good diet, you're still not going to reap the benefits of it unless you get rid of those blockages, those subluxation problems. Acid reflux will often happen because the sphincter here doesn't actually work efficiently. And so all that happens is you get reflux being thrown up. Acid from the stomach is pushed back up into the esophagus, and the esophagus obviously is not designed to withstand the huge acidic conditions of stomach acid. And it's purely because your sphincter, which is a specialized muscle, is not firing properly. And the sphincter is controlled by the autonomic nervous system. Okay? So if you've got subluxations here, that's going to affect your sphincter control, or could possibly affect your sphincter control. And this now might be causing your acid reflux. Make sense? It's not because of a lack of, antacids or Gaviscon. All right. So we talked about that, yeah. Okay, so this is a huge problem now. Just the micro trauma that we're involved in all day, every day. Technique, it causes these subluxations to develop. So you may be thinking, well, how do you know if you have any subluxations? Well, number one, we can use instrumentation. There's ways that we can use special instruments to measure how well the nervous system is working. We can also, though, feel the spine through motion and static palpation. We can feel where the spine's not moving properly. And you can tell straight away if there's a blockage there. Posture, looking at your posture. All right, so posture normally is the window to a person's spine. As the posture is off, so the spine and nervous system is off as well. So when you're looking at a person's posture at home, I don't have time because I know we're running out of time here, but start to look at your family members and your friends. And when you look at their posture, okay, I'm going to demonstrate something to you. Spot the posture that I'm doing, the obvious one. Just look at my head and neck. Yeah, so can you see this ear is lower than this ear? So your ears should be level. So if you see one ear lower than the other, probably there's a subluxation in the neck, okay? Or if you see something like this, you see this ear more than this ear, okay? Head's turned. Or you might see something like this. You'd be surprised at how often that happens. And then they're wondering why they're always heavy on their left side. Your head is about 10% of your body weight, okay? Simply because you're doing this, okay? So the chin should be in the middle of the chest, all right? Because the head is shifted, translated, okay? So that's something you should check out as well. Looking at the rib cage, if you see something like this, can you see there's a bigger gap now between my arm and my torso than on this side? It's because my whole rib cage is shifted to the right, okay? Or you might see one shoulder is higher than the other. All right? So these are some of the things you can look at. When you look at the person from the side, a straight line should pass through the ear, shoulder, hip, knee, and ankle. So if you see something like this, which is like 90% of people now, okay? We've got problems. The head's coming too far forward, pelvis is slumping forward as well. Okay, that causes huge pressures on the lower back, okay? and mid-back and the neck. And that's probably 80% of the Western population, probably even higher. Okay, if you're working at a desk all day long, it's like the T-Rex position. Okay, all right. So look at the posture. Start to make these connections. I promise you, they are not going to be healthy if you're seeing these problems there. Okay, because the nervous system can't fire properly when that's happening because there's pressure being put on those nerves. And obviously, an X-ray is a really, really good way of us being able to see. Okay, it's one of the best ways to see how that spine is aligned. Okay, so 3 steps to correct the cause. Break the bad habits. Add in the specific exercises that we will give you based upon the postural distortion problems we can see. So we're going to get you doing specific mirror image exercises to correct those postural problems. And chiropractic adjustments are incredibly effective at actually removing those subluxations, getting the spine moving better again, and taking pressure off the nerves. All right? We're the only profession that is trained to detect and correct subluxations. This is what we do, and this is what we specialize in.
Can you tell me the difference between a chiropractor and an osteopath?
They focus more on vasculature and musculature, okay? Musculoskeletal and vasculature. So blood flow and musculoskeletal system. Whereas a chiropractor, its main focus is nervous system. Okay? When we adjust you, our primary focus is to take pressure off your nervous system and to get your brain working properly. Obviously, with the adjustments we're doing, it's helping with all those other things as well, though. So there's going to be overlap. All right? And some adjustment techniques are even similar, but it's the goal slightly different. Okay? So we're focusing specifically on removing subluxations, interferences in the nervous system. That's a unique concept to chiropractic. Okay, so it's the focus is just slightly different. Okay, but obviously if the focus is different, a lot of the things that happen are going to be very different. There is a dangerous belief that nothing can be done. In fact, one of the biggest health problems, I think, in my experience, is procrastination. In fact, I would say procrastination is probably the biggest thief of health. After all you've learned today, if you want to get healthy, today's your day. Now's your chance. All right. I've seen so many people in the past who just haven't acted quickly and they've just hoped for the best. And when we just ignore things, what tends to happen? They just get worse. And then the problem is now much bigger to fix and takes much longer to fix. And it tends to end up being much more costly to fix as well. All right. So one of the things that you might be thinking then is, do I have any subluxations then that I should get checked out? And if you're sitting there thinking if you do, we've got a special offer for you. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to do a detailed history and an examination with you. And if we find that there's any significant subluxations there that we can just see from that preliminary consultation, we'll also then suggest doing a computer-generated posture analysis, which will pick up a lot more than what I could just see with my naked eye. And also we'll do a set of x-rays, all right? And then we'll go through a detailed report of findings with you with that. So on the x-rays, we'll show you where your x-rays are versus where they should be, and we'll be able to show you exactly which parts of your spine are out of alignment and are potentially putting stress to your nervous system. And then we'll match that with your postural problems as well. And then we'll put together a care plan if you want to get it sorted out. We never push people into care plans, but what we do encourage people is to get yourself checked, find out, see if there is a subluxation problem that might be causing your problem. And so what we're doing is we're providing, always at the Body Signals, we do a special offer for that. The normal cost of the assessment plus the report of findings, which is normally an hour assessment and normally about a 45-minute report, it normally costs £160. But with the Body Signals program, we'll give it to you for just £80. But what we've decided to do is, for those of you, because you've actually taken time to be here tonight, and it's just before Christmas, I know things are a bit tight for everyone, we've decided tonight we'll drop it to just $49. So if you want to get that assessment done, please just speak to Audrey at the front desk there. But you do need to pay tonight if you want the £49. And I do that for one reason only.
You need the money.
Because I need the money. But it's because it's to help you stop procrastinating. Okay. And also it's not fair on people who come in tomorrow, you're now paying full fare. Okay. So Please understand. So please, if you're not really serious about this, don't waste. We've only got a few limited spots. All right. So if you're not serious about this, like rather leave those spots for people who really need it. But if you want to get that special offer, it is available just for tonight only. Just speak to Audrey at the front desk on your way out, and she'll book that in for £49. And what we also will do is we'll offer it to any family or friends that you've got who you think would benefit from an assessment as well. We've decided to extend it as well to them. Okay, so if you know of anyone else, 49 as well. Okay, but you will have to pay for them as well. So you'll have to get your money back from them. Okay, and if they decide not to, we can always refund. Okay, all right. I'll be available here for a few minutes afterwards just to take any burning questions if any of you have them. Otherwise, thank you all. You've been a great audience, and hopefully we will see you at your assessment. Those of you who are regulars here, hope that was helpful, and we'll see you at your next adjustment. All right, thank you.